My name is Melissa Jameson. I was born in Vernon, British Columbia, in August 1981. So I actually like to joke that I think I'm one of 5 people that moved here in 2007 that did not move here for the ski hill. I moved here in March 2007 to work at the Revelstoke Review. At the time, I had just finished up a temporary employment contract with their sister publication in Vernon, and they had reached out to me. They were looking for a reporter, and so I agreed to come here thinking I was going to stay for a year and then sort of move on. And it's been, I think, 16 or 17 years now, so it's been a while. So my connection here is I have family who came here in the 1900s. So probably the best way to explain it is to explain, so my grandfather, who I refer to as my papa, his name is Earl Fay. So in 1937, his mom passed away, and the story that I know is that his father sent him by train with a note pinned on him to Mount Cartier, to the farm at Mount Cartier, which was, I believe, like the Ukrainian settlement at the time. And so his aunt, Florentina Hold, I went and got him at the train station. I'm not sure how that happened, but that's, like I said, the story I've heard is he had a note pinned to him. He was sent here when he was about 9 years old to live on the farm of his aunt and uncle, Florentina and Rolly Hold, and grew up on the farm with his cousin Lorraine, met my grandma here, got married, all these things, so I think it's something important is that, so when my mom and my uncles were growing up, they would come out to the farm to visit, and to them, my great aunt and uncle were and are their grandparents, and so I always refer to them as my great grandparents. It's been really interesting, and I think interesting in the perspective that a lot of people that are still living from my grandparents' generation know my connection and know who I am, but because of being removed from the community for so long. So my mom was born, and I like to joke that she was born in the Cooper's parking lot because that's where the hospital used to be, which is now Save-On. But they didn't live here for very long. They moved to Ashcroft. My papa worked for CPR, for the Canadian Pacific Railway, and so they moved away quite soon. And so there's this generational gap of people who don't know my connection. And it's really interesting because I'm seen in the community in different ways. So there's, the older generation that knows my connection through my family. And then there's just people who know that I've been here for 17 years and have become part of the community that way. So when I moved here, I had a chronic illness, but I wasn't disabled to the point where I needed accessibility. I didn't have any sort of accessibility requirements. And then in about 2016, 2017, I started having some health issues and became more disabled. And so it was very interesting to sort of suddenly become a disabled person trying to access the community. And I very quickly realized that our community is unfortunately not very accessible. And it is is frustrating. I think there's been a lot of change within, especially the past 5 years. More recognition of accessibility needs and different types of disability. It's still very difficult to navigate the community. I use a cane or a walking stick, some people call it. I also have a rollator or a walker that I use. However, I don't often use my rollator. And there's several reasons for that. One is a lot of buildings here are older buildings. So they often have stairs or a step to get into, which makes it difficult to access. And often I find that buildings that do have a flat surface to enter and exit, often the way that the inside is set up is they're not conducive to the width of a wheelchair or the width of somebody using a walker. Or often I find that if they do have the automatic door opener, it's not turned on. And it makes it very cumbersome when you have a walker to sort of try and, especially if it's an automatic door that's not turned on, it's got the motor in it, so it's very heavy to open. So that can be frustrating. And I find too, I think attitudes towards disability are changing. There's been a lot of education in the community happening, but I still think that there is sort of this lack of understanding that disability can happen to anyone. I mean, we're overall a very active community, and so I think people hold this idea sometimes of like, if they're active and exercise and all these different things that disability won't happen to them, but we know that's not the case. I think with younger generations, I think it's more accepted that, disability is part of life, and that everybody deserves the same access to the community and resources, regardless of, the type of disability or how disability was onset. But I think within, older generations, so, myself kind of being on the cusp of a millennial and Gen X, I'm kind of right in the middle there in 1981, or like right on the cutoff, and older, I think there's a lot of misunderstanding and this idea that if people would have done something differently, that they could have avoided becoming disabled, regardless of the reasoning, and this idea that disability is the worst thing that can happen to you, where the reality is most people, and in fact all people, will experience disability at some point in their lives. You can look at it from a variety of lenses. As people age, they have more difficulty with stairs. They have more difficulty, weakness. Even something as simple as pregnancy. You don't see that as a disability, but when you're very heavily pregnant, sometimes navigating the community can be difficult. And so I think looking at the community from an accessibility from a universal standpoint is something that I always talk about when I'm asked to speak about disability, because creating automatic door openers is not only helpful for seniors with strength issues or a disabled person with mobility issues, it's also really helpful for that mom with a stroller and 3 kids in tow who's trying to just get it in and out of the bank. Like, I know we have some really great programs here that allow low-income people with disabilities and just low-income people in general access to resources like being able to go to the pool or being able to go to the gym. But there are additional steps that happen, and there is a requirement for sort of financial proof. Then you have to go through, and I'm not sure which organization is managing it right now, but you have to go through whichever organization is managing it. You have to meet with someone there. You have to sort of have a conversation with them. They want access to financial information, so whether that is providing a copy of your most recent tax return or pay stubs or your disability pension report. So if you're receiving Canada Pension Plan disability or persons with disability through the provincial government, basically you have to somehow provide financial information. And that can be a barrier for some people. A lot of people don't feel comfortable about that. A lot of people have sort of internalized shame or internalized ableism on being on disability, and so they don't want to or won't access those programs because of these hoops they have to jump through. And even just navigating the community can take more effort than I think able-bodied people realize. Planning out your day. I know for myself, I get very fatigued in being out in the community, so I have to plan, rest periods before and after. So often people see me at events and they, see me very, what I call my on face, right? And so I'm very engaged, and I have a very public job where, I really try to be engaging and I'm part of the community. But what people don't see with myself and a lot of other disabled people is, before and after having periods of rest at home or periods of not being able to do anything at home because you've gone out in the community, or having to map out where you're going or what mobility aid you're taking depending on which buildings you're going to. Yeah, and there's a lot of judgment too. I think there is a lack of understanding about mobility aids and how they're used. I know I experienced a person coming up to me because they had seen me in my yard not using mobility aid. And so they had basically said that I was faking my disability and that they should call the ministry on me. And so there's this lack of understanding about how and when mobility aids are used, and this idea that if you're not using it all of the time, then you must not need it. Or this idea, another comment I get often is when I use my rollator, or my mobility walker, I have to obviously put it in my vehicle and take it out of my vehicle. And there's this idea that because I can lift it in and out of my vehicle, I must not need to use it. It is, difficult to do that, but you do it because using it is better overall. And so that little bit of energy you use is worthwhile. I think everyone struggles with some form of internalized ableism. So I think addressing and finding where your places of internalized ableism are and addressing those. I know even myself as a disabled person, I've had to spend a lot of time recognizing where my own ableism is and its impact on my disability and my ability to access the community. We often overlook the intersections of disability with, for example, gender identity and race and all of those other intersectional pieces that as a community and as individuals we can really, I think, make strides on if we talk about it more. There's always this interesting, it's always fascinated me, this idea in Revelstoke about, are you a local? There's this idea in Revelstoke that if you were born and raised here, you're a local, and if you're not, then you're not a local. But there's kind of these unwritten exceptions to the rule, depending on who you talk to. So for example, people that know me really well, that are connected and considered locals here, or people, like I said, that are from my grandparents' generation, they sort of consider me a local, an honorary local, but people from my generation and my parents' generation don't know who I am, and so they, they're often like, you're not really a local. I think a local is a person who, and I think this applies across the board to any community, is I think if you have lived in a community for a significant amount of time, so I don't know, let's go with 5 years. I think that's pretty significant with the way the world works now. I think if you've, live in a community for 5 years, if you contribute to the community in whichever way you can, so whether that is, being employed or volunteering or just accessing the community in some way, just because, again, going back to disability, not everybody is able to contribute in the same way. So I think if you contribute in the community in whatever manner you can, and you've lived here for a significant period of time, I think that makes you a local.